The crash of an expensive camera lens shattering against the wall mere inches from Eliza Sawyer's head echoed through Vermilion like a gunshot. The restaurant fell silent, conversations dying mid-sentence, silverware frozen halfway to mouths. Everyone in New Orleans' most exclusive dining establishment knew what happened to people who crossed Adrian Romano. Everyone except, apparently, the fearless photographer now standing her ground, clutching her remaining camera to her chest like armor, green eyes blazing with defiance. "Are you done with your tantrum?" Liz asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Or would you like to destroy another $3,000 piece of equipment that doesn't belong to you?" Adrian Romano's dark eyes narrowed dangerously. At 35, he commanded the room with the ease of someone born to power, tailored Italian suit emphasizing his broad shoulders, dark hair precisely styled, an air of controlled danger emanating from him like heat. He leaned forward, palms flat on the white tablecloth, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried farther than a shout. "You were told to photograph the food, the restaurant, not me, not my business associates. I was hired to capture the atmosphere of Vermilion's anniversary celebration," Liz countered, conscious of every eye in the room on her. "That includes the owner and his guests. It's literally in the contract your sister signed." A muscle twitched in Adrian's jaw. Behind him, men in dark suits shifted uncomfortably, hands drifting toward jacket interiors. The maître d' looked as though he might faint. "Delete them," Adrian commanded. "All of them. Now." "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Adrian straightened slowly, buttoning his suit jacket in a deliberate gesture that somehow seemed more threatening than a raised fist. He stepped around the table, moving toward her with the fluid grace of a predator. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Do you know who I am, Miss Sawyer?" The fact that he knew her name without introduction sent a chill down her spine. "Should I care?" Liz replied, raising her chin slightly. A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. At a nearby table, someone whispered a prayer. Adrian stopped mere inches from her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne and see the barely controlled rage in his eyes. "I could make you disappear with one phone call." His voice was conversational, almost gentle. "No one would even look for you." Something inside Liz snapped. Maybe it was the 3 eviction notices stacked on her kitchen counter. Maybe it was the medical bills from her father's cancer treatments that had drained her savings. Or maybe it was simply that she'd spent her entire life being bullied by people who thought their money made them untouchable. "Listen carefully, Mr. Romano," she said, stepping even closer, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "I've spent the last 5 years photographing war zones in Syria and Ukraine. I've been shot at by actual terrorists. I've slept in bombed-out buildings and outrun militia groups." She tapped her camera. "These photos? Already backed up to 3 different cloud servers. Something happens to me, they go public. Automatically." It was a bluff, a desperate, dangerous bluff, but the slight widening of Adrian's eyes told her it had landed. "So go ahead," she continued, heart hammering against her ribs. "Make your phone call. But understand that I am not afraid of you, and I don't respond well to threats." For 5 breathless seconds, Adrian simply stared at her. The entire restaurant seemed suspended in time, waiting. Then something unexpected happened. The corner of Adrian's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but something like respect. "Dominic," he called, not taking his eyes off Liz. A tall man with watchful eyes materialized at his side. "Miss Sawyer is leaving," Adrian said. "See that she gets home safely." "That won't be necessary," Liz replied, already gathering her remaining equipment. "I can find my own way out." "Insist," Adrian countered, a command rather than a request. "New Orleans can be dangerous after dark, especially for someone who's caught my attention." The words hung between them, threat and promise intertwined. "Keep the photos," Adrian added, surprising her. "Consider them payment for the damaged equipment." As Dominic escorted her through the restaurant, Liz could feel Adrian's gaze following her. Just before reaching the door, she glanced back. He stood exactly where she'd left him, studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Outside in the humid New Orleans night, Dominic opened the door to a sleek black car. "He doesn't like surprises," the man said, his first words to her. "Remember that." "Is that an apology or a warning?" Liz asked. "Both." As the car pulled away from Vermilion, Liz finally allowed her hands to tremble. She'd just confronted one of New Orleans' most dangerous men, lied to his face, and somehow walked away. But the momentary victory was overshadowed by the knowledge that Adrian Romano now knew her name, and judging by the car currently delivering her home, her address as well. What she didn't know couldn't know was that the photos she'd taken that night would soon prove far more dangerous than she ever imagined. The next morning, Liz's cramped French Quarter apartment/studio was illuminated by harsh reality. She sat at her desk, staring at her bank account balance on her laptop screen, $267.42. Not enough for rent, due in 3 days. Definitely not enough to replace the $3,000 lens Romano had destroyed. "This is why I told you to stick to wedding photography," Rachel said, sorting through prints in the small darkroom area. Her best friend and part-time assistant had been saying some version of this since Liz returned from Syria last year. Weddings don't throw temper tantrums. They just have drunk uncles and bridezillas. War photography doesn't pay enough. "Wedding photography makes me want to die of boredom," Liz replied, scrolling through her emails. 3 more rejected grant applications. There has to be a middle ground. "Yeah, it's called not pissing off the local crime family," Rachel muttered. "What were you thinking, Liz?" "I was thinking I was hired to do a job," Liz said, pushing away from the desk. She moved to the corkboard wall where dozens of her photos were pinned. Syrian children playing in rubble, Ukrainian grandmothers defending their homes with ancient shotguns, and now, inadvertently, Adrian Romano making what appeared to be a very illegal business deal in the private dining room at Vermilion. She hadn't even realized what she'd captured until reviewing the images later. Romano passing an envelope to Commissioner Howard, the police commissioner tucking it into his jacket, a handshake that clearly sealed more than a dinner reservation. "You know what these are worth?" Rachel asked, nodding toward the new additions. "My life, apparently," Liz replied dryly. Romano made that pretty clear. "Or," Rachel said slowly, "a lot of money to the right tabloid. I'm not a blackmailer. It's not blackmail, it's photojournalism. Exposing corruption." Rachel handed her a fresh coffee. "You've spent years risking your life to show the world uncomfortable truths. Why stop now?" Liz sipped her coffee, considering. "Because war zones follow rules. There are sides, front lines. The Romano family is everywhere in this city." The buzzing of her phone interrupted her thoughts. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Eliza Sawyer, Miss Sawyer." The voice was unmistakable, smooth and commanding. "Adrian Romano." Liz's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Rachel's eyes widened, mouthing, "Speaker," frantically. Liz shook her head violently. "How did you get this number?" Liz asked. "The same way I know about your 3 missed rent payments, your father's medical treatments at Tulane Medical Center, and your previous work in conflict zones," he replied matter-of-factly. "I make it my business to know things about people who interest me." The casual invasion of privacy made her skin crawl. "What do you want? To make you an offer." A pause. "I'd prefer to discuss it in person." "I'm not really interested in meeting in some abandoned warehouse to get taught a lesson," Liz replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. Adrian's low chuckle surprised her. "Nothing so dramatic. Lunch, public place, your choice of venue. Why would I agree to that? Because I'm willing to pay $20,000 for your professional services." Liz nearly dropped the phone. $20,000 would solve every financial problem currently crushing her: rent, equipment, her father's ongoing treatments. "What services?" she asked suspiciously. "Photography, Miss Sawyer. What else?" His tone suggested he was enjoying her discomfort. Liz glanced at Rachel, who was frantically gesturing for her to say yes while simultaneously miming slitting her throat, perfectly summarizing their options. Lafayette Cemetery. Noon, Liz decided. Public, touristy, plenty of witnesses. "A rather morbid choice," Adrian remarked. "But fitting, I suppose. Noon it is." He hung up without saying goodbye. Liz set the phone down carefully, as though it might explode. "Are you insane?" Rachel demanded. "You're actually going to meet him?" $20,000, Rachel," Liz said, running her hands through her short auburn hair. "That's a year of breathing room. It's not worth your life. He's not going to kill me in the middle of a tourist attraction. No, he'll just follow you home afterward." Liz turned back to the corkboard, studying Adrian Romano's face in her photographs. Sharp features, eyes that missed nothing, the controlled power in his stance. Everything about him screamed danger, but also something else, a weariness around his eyes. A moment of genuine laughter captured when he thought no one was watching. "I need the money," Liz said finally. "Dad's treatments aren't covered by insurance anymore. The clinical trial costs." "I know," Rachel softened. "Just be careful. Bring pepper spray. And that rape whistle I got you. I'm meeting a Mafia boss, Not going on a Tinder date. Bring them both anyway. At home that night, Liz reviewed every image she'd taken at Vermilion, looking for anything that might explain Romano's sudden job offer. Most were innocuous, elegant plating, atmospheric lighting, candid shots of pleased patrons. Then there were the others. Romano and Commissioner Howard. Romano and a man she now recognized from news reports as Dante Russo, from a rival organization. But one photo made her pause. Adrian standing slightly apart from his entourage, looking out the restaurant's window. His reflection captured perfectly in the glass. In that unguarded moment, he looked lonely, isolated, despite being surrounded by people. It was the same expression she'd seen countless times on the faces of powerful men in conflict zones, the weight of command, of decisions that affected lives. Her father had once told her that her greatest gift as a photographer wasn't her technical skill, but her empathy, her ability to see the person behind the persona. Looking at Adrian Romano's reflection, she wondered what person existed behind the dangerous facade. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Wear practical shoes tomorrow. The job may involve uneven terrain. Before she could stop herself, she texted back. Are we going to be digging any graves at this cemetery? 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, only if you continue to be reckless with expensive camera equipment. Despite everything. Liz smiled, then immediately frowned at herself. This wasn't a game. Adrian Romano was dangerous, a criminal who'd threatened her less than 24 hours ago. Whatever job he was offering, it couldn't be legal or safe. But as she looked at her stack of overdue notices and thought of her father's increasingly desperate fight against cancer, she knew she was out of options. Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 was crowded with tourists, despite the oppressive midday heat. Liz arrived early, positioning herself near the entrance with clear sightlines in all directions. She'd chosen her outfit carefully: practical jeans, sturdy boots, a light button-down that wouldn't restrict movement if she needed to run. Her camera hung around her neck, more security blanket than professional tool. She spotted Adrian Romano the moment he entered the cemetery. Unlike the tourists in shorts and t-shirts, he wore tailored gray slacks and a white linen shirt that somehow remained crisp in the humidity. He moved with easy confidence through the crowd, which instinctively parted for him. No bodyguards visible, though Liz suspected they were nearby. He found her immediately, as though he'd known exactly where to look. "Miss Sawyer," he greeted, extending his hand. She hesitated before shaking it. His grip was firm but not aggressive, his hand surprisingly calloused for a man who appeared to live in designer suits. "Mr. Romano." "Adrian, please." He gestured toward the cemetery's interior. "Shall we walk?" As they strolled between the above-ground tombs, Liz noted how he positioned himself between her and the other visitors, a protective stance rather than threatening. Curiouser and curiouser. "I assume you're wondering why I asked you here," he began. "The $20,000 photography job did pique my interest," she replied dryly. His lips curved slightly. "Direct. I appreciate that." He stopped near an ornate family mausoleum. "What do you know about my family, Miss Sawyer? I know your restaurants are the best in New Orleans. I know your family has interests beyond the hospitality industry. I know people are afraid of you." An accurate if incomplete assessment. He studied her for a moment. "The Romano family has been in New Orleans for 4 generations. My great-grandfather built an empire from nothing during Prohibition. My grandfather expanded it. My father maintained it. And now it's your turn," Liz finished. "Yes." Something flickered across his face, responsibility, perhaps, or resignation. "But the world has changed. Old methods are becoming problematic." "Problematic," Liz repeated. "Is that Mafia code for likely to get you arrested?" Instead of taking offense, Adrian's expression lightened with what appeared to be genuine amusement. "I can see why you've survived war zones, Miss Sawyer. You don't scare easily. Fear is a luxury I can't afford." The words came out more honestly than she'd intended. Adrian's gaze sharpened with interest. "An unusual perspective. Did you bring me here to discuss philosophy, or was there an actual job offer?" "Both, perhaps." He reached into his pocket and withdrew an envelope, handing it to her. Inside was a check for $5,000 made out to Eliza Sawyer, along with a business card for Vermilion Restaurant. "A down payment," he explained, "and compensation for the damaged lens. And the job? I need a photographer for a series of important family events over the next month. Someone discreet, observant, and," his eyes met hers, "unaffiliated with certain circles in New Orleans." "You want me to spy for you," Liz stated flatly. "I want you to notice things, to document them. People behave differently when they think no one is watching. Why me? There are dozens of photographers in New Orleans who haven't threatened to expose you. Adrian's expression turned serious. Because you showed integrity last night. You stood your ground when threatened. You didn't grovel, didn't plead. That suggests a person who can't be easily bought or intimidated, ironically. The exact kind of person I need. Liz fingered the check, suspicious. What exactly would I be looking for at these family events? Inconsistencies, unusual behaviors, people who seem out of place. You think someone in your organization is disloyal, she deduced. Adrian didn't confirm or deny, but his silence was answer enough. Why not use your own people for this? Because my own people may be the problem. There was a weariness in his voice that surprised her. I need an outsider's perspective. Fresh eyes. And if I see something, if I identify this person, then you collect the remaining 15,000 and never have to see me again. He paused. Unless you wish to, of course. There was something almost playful in his tone that caught her off guard. She looked at him more carefully. Up close, in the natural light, Adrian Romano was even more striking than he'd appeared in the restaurant. Strong jawline, intelligent eyes, a presence that commanded attention without effort. Liz realized with dismay that under different circumstances, she would have found him attractive. And if I say no? She asked. Then you keep the 5,000 as an apology for last night's misunderstanding. No strings attached. It seemed too easy. Why would you trust me with this? I could take the money and go straight to the police. Adrian's smile was knowing. You won't. You sound very certain. I am. He gestured to a nearby tomb where an elderly man was placing flowers. Your father visits his wife's grave every Thursday. He leaves yellow roses her favorite. Even during his chemotherapy treatments. That kind of devotion speaks to how he raised his daughter, a woman of principle. Liz felt a chill despite the heat. You've been having my father followed? I've been doing my due diligence, Adrian corrected. Before entrusting someone with something important, I need to understand their character. The invasion of privacy should have angered her. Instead, Liz found herself curious. And what conclusions did you draw about my character, Mr. Romano? That you're loyal to a fault, stubborn, principled, and desperate enough to consider an offer you'd normally reject outright. His eyes softened slightly. Your father's experimental treatments are expensive. Insurance won't cover them. The money from conflict photography has dried up, and your gallery shows barely break even. Hearing her struggles laid out so clinically made Liz's chest tighten. You've been thorough. I'm thorough about everything, Miss Sawyer. A notification chimed on his phone. He glanced at it, his expression hardening instantly. Our time is up for now, he said, returning to business. My sister's engagement party is Friday evening at Vermilion, 8 o'clock. If you decide to accept, be there by 7. Dominic will meet you. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Miss Sawyer. If you accept this job, you'll be under my protection. That means something in New Orleans. Is that supposed to reassure me? It should. His eyes held hers. Because if you're under my protection, the only person you need fear in this city is me. He smiled slightly. And despite our dramatic introduction, I believe we understand each other now. With that, he walked away, leaving Liz standing among the tombs with a $5,000 check and a decision that could change everything. Tulane Medical Center's oncology ward was painted in soothing colors that did nothing to mask its essential nature. Liz sat beside her father's bed, watching as a nurse adjusted his IV. James Sawyer had once been robust, a former Marine turned high school history teacher who'd raised Liz alone after her mother's death. Now, cancer had whittled him to a shadow, though his eyes remained bright with the stubborn determination that Liz had inherited. You're frowning again, kiddo, he observed once the nurse left. What's going on in that head of yours? Liz forced a smile. Just work stuff. Nothing important. Liar. He adjusted himself in the bed with a wince. You've got that same look you had before you told me you were going to Syria. Spill it. She debated deflecting again, but knew it was pointless. Her father had always read her too well. I've been offered a job, she admitted. Good money. Very good money. But it's complicated. She picked at a loose thread on her jeans. The client is problematic. Problematic how? Let's just say he operates in gray areas. Her father's eyes sharpened with concern. How gray are we talking? Charcoal. Liz tried for levity. Maybe darker. Ah. He was quiet for a moment. This client wouldn't happen to be connected to certain local families, would he? Liz looked up, startled. How did you— I taught high school in New Orleans for 30 years, Liz. I know how this city works. He reached for her hand. What exactly does this job entail? Just photography. Documenting events, watching people, spying. She didn't deny it. It would pay for your treatments, all of them. Plus enough to get me back on my feet. James Sawyer's face darkened. I won't have you endangering yourself for my medical bills. Dad, no, Elizabeth. He used her full name, a rarity. I've lived my life, a good one. If these treatments don't work, they will work, Liz insisted, the familiar argument rising like a tide. If they don't, he continued firmly. I'm at peace with that. What I'm not at peace with is the idea of my daughter getting mixed up with criminals because of me. Liz stood and moved to the window, looking out at the New Orleans skyline. The truth was, her father's treatments were only part of the equation. The desperation that had driven her to confront Adrian rather than back down. The same desperation that now had her considering his offer. It went deeper. Maybe I'm already mixed up with them, she said quietly. I took photos the other night. At Vermilion. Photos of things I probably shouldn't have seen. Her father's silence drew her back from the window. His expression was grim. What kind of things? Adrian Romano, passing an envelope to Commissioner Howard. Meeting with Dante Russo. The kind of things that people like me aren't supposed to notice. And now Romano wants to hire you? After you saw all this? Her father's skepticism was evident. Liz, that doesn't make any sense unless he's trying to keep me close, keep an eye on me. Or unless he has other plans for those observation skills of yours. Her father's perception had always been razor sharp. You said he's offering a lot of money. What's the real job? Liz hesitated, then explained Adrian's proposition, the suspicion of a traitor, the need for an outside observer. Her father listened intently, his expression growing more troubled. These people don't involve outsiders in family business, he said finally. Not unless they're desperate, or unless there's something else going on. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Mercer entered, clipboard in hand, his expression carefully neutral. Miss Sawyer, Mr. Sawyer. I have your latest results. Liz's heart sank. She knew that tone, that carefully constructed professional distance. The treatment isn't working, her father guessed. Dr. Mercer sighed. The tumors have continued to grow despite our current approach. At this point, standard protocols have been exhausted. What options do we have? Liz asked, her voice tight. There's a new trial at the Romano Medical Research Center, Dr. Mercer said. It's showing promising results for cases like your father's, but— he hesitated. But what? Liz pressed. It's extremely selective. And expensive. Insurance won't cover experimental treatments. And the waiting list is substantial. Liz felt the floor shift beneath her feet. The Romano Medical Research Center, she repeated. Yes, funded by the Romano family, state-of-the-art facility. Her father's eyes met hers, a silent communication passing between them. This couldn't be coincidence. Adrian had known about her father's condition, about the treatments. Had he also known that his family's research center might be James Sawyer's last hope? After Dr. Mercer left, her father broke the silence. I don't like this, Liz. It feels like manipulation. Or an opportunity, Liz countered. Dad, this could be your chance. At what cost to you? She had no answer for that. Her phone buzzed a text from Rachel saying she'd found something important on the Vermilion photos. Liz kissed her father's forehead. I have to go. Think about the trial, please. On the drive to her apartment, Liz's mind raced. The Romano Medical Research Center. Adrian's job offer. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Either Adrian was offering her a lifeline, or he was manipulating her vulnerability with surgical precision. When she arrived home, Rachel was pacing the small living room, laptop open on the coffee table. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. At the hospital. Dad's treatment isn't working. Liz dropped her bag, too exhausted for niceties. What did you find? Rachel's expression shifted from irritation to sympathy, then back to urgency. You need to see this. She opened a photo from the Vermilion event, a seemingly innocuous shot of guests mingling. Look at the mirror in the background. Liz leaned closer. Reflected in the ornate mirror was Dante Russo, the rival family's underboss, speaking intensely with someone just out of frame. Now look at this one, Rachel said, opening another image taken moments later. The mirror now showed who Russo was speaking to. Dominic Winters, Adrian Romano's right-hand man. They're working together, Liz whispered. the implications sinking in. And Romano probably has no idea, Rachel finished. Now you know why he's willing to pay you so much. He's surrounded by snakes. Liz stared at the images, connecting dots. Adrian's need for an outside observer. His sister's engagement party. The traitor he suspected. It was all coming into focus. Her phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. Have you decided, Miss Sawyer? AR. The simplicity of the message belied the complexity of the choice. Refuse. And her father's chances diminished dramatically. Accept, and she'd be stepping directly into a dangerous power struggle within one of New Orleans' most notorious families. But what choice did she really have? She typed back, Friday, 7 p.m. I'll be there. The response came immediately. Wise decision. Wear something inconspicuous. You'll want to blend in. Liz put the phone down and looked at Rachel. I need you to do me a favor. Pull everything you can find on Dominic Winters and Dante Russo. Their history, connections, business dealings, everything. You're really doing this? Rachel asked, concern evident in her voice. I don't have a choice anymore. Liz glanced at the hospital bill on her counter, then back at the incriminating photos on the screen. Besides, someone needs to warn Adrian Romano that his trusted right hand is plotting against him. And that someone has to be you? That someone is going to be paid $20,000 to be me, Liz replied with grim determination. Let's just hope I live long enough to spend it. Friday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. Liz stood before her closet, contemplating what inconspicuous meant at a high society engagement party. She settled on a simple black dress, elegant enough not to stand out, plain enough to fade into the background. Professional, unmemorable. She clipped her press credentials to a lanyard, the perfect prop to justify her presence in camera. Rachel had spent 2 days digging into Dominic Winters and Dante Russo. The results painted a disturbing picture. Both men had attended the same private school in their youth, maintained connections despite their families' rivalry, and had several business investments that overlapped in ways that seemed deliberately obscured. You should tell Romano before the party, Rachel had insisted. Call him, but Liz knew better. Accusations against a right-hand man weren't made lightly, especially without concrete proof. She needed more than reflections in mirrors and circumstantial connections. She needed tonight. Dominic was waiting outside Vermilion when her Uber arrived. He wore the same watchful expression she remembered, though his eyes widened slightly at her appearance. Miss Sawyer, he greeted with practiced neutrality. You clean up well. Don't sound so surprised, she replied, adjusting her camera strap. I do occasionally photograph things besides war and crime bosses. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Mr. Romano is expecting you. Follow me. The restaurant had been transformed for the engagement celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. Floral arrangements of white roses and blue hydrangeas created an atmosphere of elegant romance. Already, the space was filling with New Orleans' elite politicians, business leaders, and undoubtedly, members of various criminal enterprises, all mingling like old friends. Dominic led her through a side entrance to a private office where Adrian waited, studying documents at a polished desk. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from concentration to something more complex when he saw her. Miss Sawyer, he said, standing. Thank you for coming. In his tailored black suit, Adrian Romano looked every inch the powerful businessman, and nothing like the criminal she knew him to be. The dichotomy was jarring. You can thank your $20,000, Liz replied, determined to maintain professional distance. Adrian's lips curved slightly. Of course. He gestured to a chair across from him. Please, sit. We should discuss specifics before the event begins. Dominic moved to stand by the door, his presence a reminder of the dangerous world she was entering. Tonight is my sister's engagement party, Adrian began once she was seated. Karina is the legitimate face of our family enterprises, Harvard Business School, corporate boards, charity work. She's marrying the son of Judge Wilson next spring. Convenient, Liz observed. Strategic, Adrian corrected without apology. The Romano family is evolving. This marriage represents an important alliance. And my role in this evolution? Document the evening. Capture the appropriate moments for public consumption. He slid an envelope across the desk. But more importantly, observe these individuals. Inside were photographs of 5 men and 3 women. Liz recognized Commissioner Howard and Dante Russo immediately. The others were unfamiliar. Key figures in our organization, Adrian explained. Watch their interactions. Note who speaks with whom, who avoids each other. Pay particular attention to Dante Russo. Why Russo specifically? Liz asked, testing whether Adrian already suspected what she'd discovered. He's been unusually interested in our family matters lately. Adrian's gaze was penetrating. I find sudden interest often precedes betrayal. Liz's fingers itched to pull out her phone, to show him the photos of Dominic and Russo. But with Dominic standing mere feet away, such a revelation could be suicidal. She needed more evidence, and more importantly, a private moment with Adrian. I understand, she said instead. Anything else? Yes. Adrian leaned forward slightly. Tonight, you are under my personal protection. That means if anyone makes you uncomfortable, if anyone threatens you or attempts to interfere with your work, you come to me immediately. The intensity of his gaze made something flutter in her chest. I can handle myself. I'm aware of your capabilities, Miss Sawyer. But in this world, my protection carries weight that your courage, admirable as it is, cannot match. Before she could respond, the door opened, and a woman entered. She was striking elegant in a midnight blue designer dress, dark hair swept up in a sophisticated twist, eyes the same penetrating gray as Adrian's. There you are, she said to Adrian before noticing Liz. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Not at all. Adrian stood. Karina, this is Eliza Sawyer, your photographer for the evening. Miss Sawyer, my sister, Karina Romano. Karina's smile was warm and seemingly genuine. The war photographer? Your work from Syria was extraordinary. That series on children in the refugee camps broke my heart. Liz blinked in surprise. You've seen my work? I follow photojournalism closely. Part of our family's charitable foundation focuses on conflict zones. She extended a manicured hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, though I must admit I'm surprised Adrian convinced you to photograph something as mundane as an engagement party. Your brother can be persuasive, Liz replied, shaking her hand. Karina laughed. That's the polite way of putting it. She turned to Adrian. The Russos have arrived. Father says you should greet them. A shadow passed over Adrian's face. Of course. He buttoned his suit jacket, returning to business. Miss Sawyer, begin your work. We'll speak later. As they departed, Dominic lingered briefly. Stay visible, he advised. And remember why you're here. Alone in the office, Liz took a deep breath. The interaction had solidified something she'd suspected. The Romano family was more complex than their reputation suggested. Adrian, the dangerous enforcer. Karina, the legitimate businesswoman, both operating in different worlds while serving the same family interests. And somewhere in their organization, treachery was brewing. The engagement party was in full swing when Liz emerged with her camera. She moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, capturing the required moments while carefully observing the subjects from Adrian's list. Commissioner Howard stayed close to Salvatore Romano, the family patriarch, a silver-haired man who commanded the room from his seat at the head table. Dante Russo worked the room with practiced charm, though Liz noticed his gaze frequently following Adrian. And Dominic Winters was notably absent from Adrian's side. An hour into the event, Liz spotted them, Dominic and Russo, heads bent together in a quiet corner. Her heart raced as she raised her camera, angling to capture them without being obvious. The telephoto lens brought their faces into sharp focus. Russo looked agitated, gesturing emphatically. Dominic's expression was cold, controlled. Quite the party, isn't it? Liz startled at the voice beside her. Karina Romano stood there, champagne flute in hand, studying her with interest. It's lovely, Liz managed, lowering her camera. My brother tells me you've been hired for more than just photography tonight, Karina said casually. Liz tensed. I'm not sure what you mean. It's all right, Karina assured her. Adrian and I don't keep secrets from each other. I know he suspects a betrayal. I know he's using you to find the traitor. She sipped her champagne. I just wonder if he's looking in the right direction. Before Liz could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. A group of men in dark suits were entering, not guests, judging by their demeanor and the visible bulges beneath their jackets. Caruso's men, Karina murmured, her expression hardening. They weren't invited. Across the room, Liz saw Adrian straighten, his hand moving subtly to his waistband. Salvatore Romano rose from his seat, face darkening with anger. Dominic and Russo had separated, moving to opposite sides of the room as though they'd never spoken. The atmosphere shifted instantly from celebration to tension. Waitstaff melted away as security personnel materialized throughout the venue. You should go, Karina told Liz urgently. This isn't a situation for civilians. But now, Miss Sawyer. Liz hesitated, then nodded, moving toward a side exit. As she passed the new arrivals, she raised her camera instinctively, capturing their faces. The leader, a hard-faced man with a scar across his cheek, noticed, his eyes locking onto hers with predatory focus. "You," he called, breaking away from his group. "What do you think you're doing?" "Press," Liz replied, indicating her credentials. "Just doing my job." The man grabbed her arm roughly. "Delete those photos. Now, take your hand off her." Adrian's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He stood just feet away, his expression cold with controlled fury. "This doesn't concern you, Romano," the scarred man sneered. "This is between me and the photographer." "Miss Sawyer is under my protection," Adrian stated, each word precisely measured. "Everything that concerns her concerns me." The implications hung in the air, weighty with unspoken threat. "You're protecting journalists now?" The scarred man laughed incredulously. "Getting soft in your old age? Would you like to test that theory, Caruso?" Adrian's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. For a tense moment, Liz thought violence would erupt right there in the elegant venue. Then the scarred man Caruso released her arm with a contemptuous shove. "Keep your pet photographer on a shorter leash, Romano. Next time, she might photograph something that gets her killed." He rejoined his group, which was now engaged in tense conversation with Salvatore. Adrian moved to Liz's side, his hand coming to rest on the small of her back in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. "Are you all right?" he asked, his eyes scanning her for injury. "I'm fine," she assured him, though her heart was racing. "Who was that?" "Anthony Caruso, enforcer for the Caruso family." Adrian's expression was grim. "Their presence here is unexpected and concerning. Should I leave?" Adrian's hand tightened slightly on her back. "No, stay close to me." His eyes met hers, intense with something beyond professional concern. "I meant what I said about my protection, Eliza." The use of her first name felt unexpectedly intimate. "I have something to show you," she said impulsively. "Something important, about Dominic and Russo." Adrian's expression shifted. "Not here. After the party. My office." He glanced around the room. "For now, continue your work, but stay within sight." As he moved away to join his father, Liz felt the weight of multiple gazes upon her Caruso's hostile stare, Dominic's suspicious glance, and most troublingly, Dante Russo's calculating assessment. She'd been marked, not just as Adrian's photographer, but as someone under his personal protection, someone important to him, and in the dangerous world she'd entered, that made her either very safe or a perfect target. Part 6. First test and shared vulnerability. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of tension. The unexpected arrival of the Caruso family representatives had cast a pall over the celebration, though most guests seemed oblivious to the undercurrents. Liz continued photographing, keeping Adrian in her peripheral vision while documenting the interactions he'd requested. What she observed troubled her. Dominic and Russo maintained their distance in public, but their eyes met frequently in wordless communication. Commissioner Howard spent 30 minutes in close conversation with Salvatore Romano before departing abruptly, and Anthony Caruso watched her with undisguised malice whenever their paths crossed. By midnight, the party had thinned considerably. Karina and her fiancé had departed an hour earlier, leaving the remaining guests to continue drinking and networking. Liz was reviewing images on her camera when she felt a presence behind her. "If you've gotten what you need," Adrian said quietly, "we should talk now." She followed him through the restaurant to his office, acutely aware of Dominic watching their departure. Inside, Adrian locked the door and moved to a cabinet, withdrawing a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses. "I suspect we both need this," he said, pouring generous measures. "It's been an eventful evening." Liz accepted the glass gratefully. The bourbon was smooth and expensive, warming her from within. "The Carusos weren't on the guest list, I take it?" "No." Adrian loosened his tie, a surprisingly human gesture. "Their appearance suggests information was leaked. The engagement wasn't public knowledge. Hence your suspicion of a traitor," Liz concluded. "Indeed." He studied her over the rim of his glass. "You mentioned having something to show me. About Dominic and Russo." Liz set down her drink and retrieved her camera, bringing up the images she'd discovered with Rachel. "These are from the night at Vermilion, when you damaged my lens," she began, unable to resist the small dig. Adrian's lips quirked slightly. "A misunderstanding I believe I've adequately compensated for." "Debatable." She handed him the camera. "Look at the mirror in the background." Adrian's expression remained neutral as he studied the images, but she noted the tightening around his eyes, the subtle clench of his jaw. "When was this taken?" Just before you noticed me photographing your table. And there's more. She showed him the images from tonight Dominic and Russo in their furtive conversation. They're working together, Adrian. I think Dominic may be your traitor. Adrian set the camera down carefully. That would be problematic. Problematic? He's your right hand. If he's betraying you to Russo, then my entire organization is compromised. Adrian finished, his voice controlled despite the gravity of the revelation. Dominic has access to everything: security protocols, business operations, family matters. You don't seem surprised, Liz observed. Adrian was quiet for a moment, swirling the bourbon in his glass. I've suspected someone close to me for some time. I'd hoped I was wrong. He looked at her directly. Thank you, Eliza. These photos are extremely valuable. Valuable enough to get me killed if the wrong people find out I took them, which is precisely why you'll remain under my protection until this matter is resolved. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. And how exactly will it be resolved? Liz asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Adrian didn't reply immediately. Instead, he moved to the window, looking out at the New Orleans night. My father built this organization on certain principles. Loyalty above all. Betrayal demands. Consequences. You mean death, Liz said flatly. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. You disapprove. I've seen enough death to last several lifetimes, she replied. In Syria, in Ukraine, death doesn't solve problems, it just creates new ones. Something shifted in Adrian's eyes, respect perhaps, or curiosity. An unusual perspective for someone in your profession. Most war photographers become desensitized. I document death, Liz corrected. I don't celebrate it. Adrian studied her with new interest. You're a surprising woman, Eliza Sawyer. So I've been told. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering her. Why did you really hire me? You must have people who could have observed these events without attracting attention. I needed someone Dominic wouldn't suspect, Adrian replied. Someone without connections to our world. There must be dozens of photographers in New Orleans who fit that description. Why me specifically? Adrian set down his glass and moved closer. Close enough that Liz could detect the subtle scent of his cologne. Because you weren't afraid of me, he said quietly. That night at Vermilion, when I shattered your lens, when I threatened you, you looked me in the eye and pushed back. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? The intensity in his gaze made her pulse quicken. People fear you for good reason. Yes, he acknowledged. But fear breeds dishonesty. People tell me what they think I want to hear. You. He shook his head slightly. You tell me the truth, regardless of consequences. That's invaluable to someone in my position. Before Liz could respond, Adrian's phone rang. His expression hardened as he answered. Romano. When? How many? Secure the location. I'm on my way. He ended the call, already moving toward the door. I have to go. There's been an incident at one of our warehouses. What kind of incident? The kind involving automatic weapons and 3 dead employees, Adrian replied grimly. Someone just hit one of our storage facilities. Liz grabbed her camera bag. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You just said I'm under your protection. If someone's targeting your organization, I'm safer with you than alone. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but another call interrupted him. Fine, he conceded after a brief conversation. But you stay in the car, out of sight. This isn't a photo opportunity. 20 minutes later, they arrived at an industrial area near the port. Police lights flashed in the distance, but the warehouse itself was cordoned off by men who were decidedly not law enforcement. Adrian exited the vehicle, instructing his driver to remain with Liz. Lock the doors, he ordered before disappearing inside. Liz waited approximately 3 minutes before her journalistic instincts overpowered her common sense. Grabbing her camera, she slipped out of the car and moved toward the warehouse, staying in the shadows. She found a side entrance unguarded, likely overlooked in the chaos. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit and cavernous. Crates and shipping containers created a labyrinth of corridors. Liz moved silently, following the sound of voices. She positioned herself behind a stack of pallets, peering through a gap with her camera raised. What she saw chilled her blood. 3 bodies lay on the concrete floor, covered with sheets. Around them stood Adrian, Dominic, and Salvatore Romano, engaged in intense conversation. Their voices echoed in the cavernous space. This was Caruso, Dominic was saying. Has to be. They showed up at the party as a distraction while their crew hit the warehouse. They knew exactly when our security would be minimal, Salvatore observed, his weathered face grave. They knew what was stored here. Which confirms we have a leak, Adrian replied, his voice controlled but lethal. Someone gave them our schedules, our inventory. We need to retaliate, Dominic insisted. Send a message. Not until we know who betrayed us, Adrian countered. If we move against Caruso now, we risk exposing ourselves further. Salvatore placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Adrian is right. We secure our remaining locations, limit information flow, find the traitor first. The warehouse door banged open. Dante Russo entered with 2 armed men, his face a mask of fury. 3 of my men were caught in this, he shouted. Working your security detail as agreed. The Carusos are laughing at both our families right now. Lower your voice, Dante, Salvatore commanded. This is still Romano territory. Territory you clearly can't protect, Russo spat. My cousin is in the hospital because of your incompetence. Adrian stepped forward, his posture shifting subtly from businessman to enforcer. Careful, Dante. Grief doesn't excuse disrespect. Russo's eyes narrowed. You think I'm being disrespectful now? Wait until I tell the other families how the mighty Romanos can't even secure their own warehouses, how the great Adrian Romano was outsmarted by the Carusos while he was playing bodyguard to some photographer. Liz's finger stilled on her camera shutter. How did Russo know about her role tonight? Unless, Russo continued, his voice dropping, the leak is coming from inside your own inner circle. Someone very close to you, Adrian. The tension in the room crackled like electricity. Adrian's hand moved imperceptibly toward his waistband. Make your accusation clearly, Dante, he said softly. Or leave. Russo smiled thinly. I'm just saying, when looking for traitors, sometimes they're hiding in plain sight. Sometimes they're the people you trust most. His gaze shifted meaningfully toward Dominic. Liz couldn't resist the photojournalist's instinct. She raised her camera, focusing on the confrontation 4 powerful men surrounded by death, their faces illuminated by harsh industrial lighting, the perfect encapsulation of their dangerous world. The shutter clicked, unnecessarily loud in the tense silence. Everyone froze. Then, as one, they turned toward her hiding place. Come out, Adrian commanded, his voice like ice. Now. Liz stood slowly, camera still in hand, heart pounding. I told you to stay in the car. Adrian cut her off, fury evident in every line of his body. Well, Russo said, smirking. The photographer. Documenting more than engagement parties now, are we? This doesn't concern you, Russo, Adrian snapped. Doesn't it? Russo's eyes gleamed with malice. She's photographing a crime scene. Our men, our business. I'd say that concerns all of us. Salvatore Romano studied Liz with calculating eyes. The camera, young lady. Before Liz could respond, Adrian moved to her side, positioning himself between her and the others. Miss Sawyer is under my protection, he stated. As is her equipment. She's a liability, Russo argued. A civilian with evidence that could destroy all of us. I agree with Russo, Dominic said, speaking for the first time. She's seen too much. The implication was clear in his tone. Liz felt cold fear settle in her stomach. She stays with me, Adrian insisted. I take full responsibility. Very well, Salvatore decided after a long moment. But she doesn't leave your sight. And Adrian, his eyes hardened. If this turns problematic, you handle it, personally. The drive back to the city was tense with unspoken anger. Adrian sat beside her in the car, his posture rigid, jaw clenched. That was monumentally stupid, he finally said, breaking the silence. I'm a photojournalist, Liz replied, though her voice lacked conviction. It's instinct. Your instinct nearly got you killed tonight. Adrian turned to her, his expression fierce. Do you understand what just happened? My father gave me a direct order to eliminate you if necessary. The bluntness of his statement took her breath away. Would you have done it? In the dim light of the passing street lamps, Adrian's face was all shadows and sharp angles. A week ago, without hesitation. And now? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer, troubled. Now I find myself conflicted. The admission seemed to cost him, as though acknowledging any uncertainty was a weakness he rarely permitted himself. Because of the photos I took of Dominic and Russo? Liz asked. No. Adrian's eyes met hers in the darkness. Because somehow, in the space of a few days, you've become more than just a useful tool. You've become a complication. The word hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. I should be terrified right now, Liz said quietly. Yes, Adrian agreed. You should be. But I'm not. She held his gaze steadily. Because I saw your face when Russo mentioned your men who died tonight. I saw how you positioned yourself between me and danger. Whatever else you are, Adrian Romano, you're not the monster your reputation suggests. Something vulnerable flickered across his face so quickly she might have imagined it. Then you're not looking closely enough, he said softly, but they both knew it wasn't true. Liz awoke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back: the warehouse, the confrontation, the drive back to the city. Adrian had insisted she couldn't return to her apartment. If Dominic is working with Russo, and they both know about you, your home isn't safe, he'd explained, bringing her instead to a luxury apartment in the Garden District. This is a Romano property, security monitored. You'll stay here until this is resolved. The apartment was elegant and impersonal, clearly a safe house rather than anyone's home. Adrian had left shortly after ensuring she was settled, promising to return in the morning. Now, in the harsh light of day, the danger of her situation was impossible to ignore. She'd photographed a crime scene, witnessed a confrontation between crime families, discovered evidence that Adrian Romano's right-hand man was betraying him. Any one of those things could get her killed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Where are you?" Called hospital. "Your dad says you never showed for morning visit. Call me." Guilt twisted in Liz's stomach. With everything that had happened, she'd forgotten to let Rachel know she wouldn't be home. Forgotten her promised visit to her father. She dialed quickly. "Oh my God," Rachel answered immediately. "Please tell me you're not dead in a ditch somewhere." "I'm fine," Liz assured her. "Things got complicated last night." "Complicated how? Where are you?" Liz hesitated, knowing how it would sound. "I'm at a Romano property, a safe house." Silence then. "Are you being held against your will?" "Blink twice if you need help." "I can't see you, Rach. And no, I'm here voluntarily." "Sort of. It's for protection." "Protection from whom, exactly?" "Because from where I'm standing, the people you need protection from are the ones protecting you." Liz couldn't argue with her logic. "It's temporary, just until Adrian sorts out the situation with Dominic and Russo." "Adrian," Rachel repeated flatly. "First name basis with the mob boss now." "Fantastic." "It's not like that," Liz protested, though the memory of Adrian's intense gaze in the car last night suggested otherwise. "Look, I'll explain everything later. Right now, I need you to check on my dad. Tell him I'm on assignment, but I'll visit as soon as I can." "Fine, but promise me you'll be careful. These people play by different rules, Liz." "I know." Liz moved to the window, looking out at the manicured garden below. "Trust me, I know." After ending the call, Liz explored the apartment, finding fresh clothes in her size in the bedroom closet, another reminder of the Romano family's resources and reach. She was examining a camera setup in the living room when a knock came at the door. Security monitors showed Adrian outside, alone. She opened the door to find him in casual clothes, dark jeans, and a gray Henley that made him look younger, less intimidating than his usual suits. "You brought coffee," she observed, noting the 2 cups in his hands. "Peace offering," he replied, stepping inside. "I thought you might need it after last night. After nearly getting killed for taking photos you hired me to take?" She accepted the cup anyway. "Yeah, coffee seems appropriate." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Your sarcasm in the face of danger remains impressive." "Coping mechanism," Liz admitted, sipping the coffee. "Perfect strength, with just the right amount of cream." Another unsettling reminder of how much he knew about her. "Have you spoken with Dominic?" Adrian's expression darkened. "Not yet. I need to approach this carefully. If he suspects we know, he might accelerate whatever he's planning with Russo, which is, based on what we've gathered, a move to consolidate power. Both families under their control, with my father and me eliminated." The casual way he discussed his potential murder sent a chill through Liz. "And your plan to stop them?" "I need concrete proof of their conspiracy. Something undeniable." "You have my photos," Liz pointed out. "Photos that show them talking. Suspicious, but not definitive." Adrian set down his coffee. "I need you to continue working tonight. The Romano Foundation is hosting a charity gala at the Street Louis Hotel. Everyone will be there, including Dominic and Russo. After what happened at the warehouse, you still want me taking photos?" "More than ever." His eyes held hers. "But this time, you'll wear this." He produced a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a diamond necklace, elegant, clearly expensive, but not ostentatious. "It's beautiful, but I don't understand." The center stone contains a recording device, Adrian explained. State of the art. It will capture any conversations near you. Combined with your photos, it should give us what we need. Liz stared at the necklace, the implications sinking in. You want me to wear a wire? To spy on dangerous criminals, while looking like I'm with you? Yes, that's insane. I'm not a spy, Adrian, I'm a photographer. You're already involved, he reminded her. They've seen you with me. They know I'm protecting you. This just leverages that position. To put me in more danger, Liz countered. Adrian stepped closer, his voice softening. I wouldn't ask if there was another way. But Dominic knows all my people. He'd spot any other surveillance. You're the only one who can get close enough. And if I refuse, then I'll ensure you're safely relocated out of New Orleans. New identity, new start. The offer was tempting escape from this dangerous web she'd stumbled into, but it would mean leaving her father, abandoning the life she'd built. And the trial at the Romano Medical Research Center? She asked, watching his reaction. For my father? Adrian didn't flinch. Already arranged. He starts Monday, regardless of your decision. The unexpected answer caught her off guard. Why would you do that if I refuse to help you? Because they're separate matters, Adrian said simply. Your father's medical care isn't contingent on your cooperation. That would be... He paused, searching for the right word. Monstrous? Liz suggested. I was going to say dishonorable. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Liz studied him, trying to reconcile this man with the dangerous criminal she knew him to be. There's something I don't understand. Why go to these lengths? You could simply have Dominic and Russo killed. Isn't that how your world usually handles betrayal? Adrian was quiet for a moment. My father's generation operated that way, he finally said. Violence is the first response. But that approach has limitations. It creates blood feuds, attracts law enforcement attention, destabilizes business interests. You're evolving, Liz realized, remembering his words about his sister's engagement. Trying to, he acknowledged, which is precisely why Dominic and others resist the changes I'm implementing. They see adaptation as weakness. And what do you see it as? Survival. Adrian's gaze was direct, challenging. The world is changing, Eliza. Those who don't change with it will be left behind, or destroyed. The conviction in his voice was compelling. Despite her better judgment, Liz found herself reaching for the necklace. If I do this, she said slowly, I want something in return. Beyond the money. Name it. When this is over, I want exclusive rights to document the Romano family's transition. The full story, from criminal enterprise to legitimate business. No censorship, no restrictions. Adrian's eyebrows rose. You're asking for unprecedented access to our operations. I am. She met his gaze steadily. That's my price. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, something like admiration in his expression. You continue to surprise me, Eliza Sawyer. Is that a yes? It's a conditional yes, he clarified. You get your exclusive, but I maintain veto power over anything that could endanger lives or ongoing legitimate operations. It was more than she'd expected. Deal. Adrian nodded once, then glanced at his watch. I need to go. Security will remain outside. The gala starts at 8. A car will come for you at 7:30. He moved to leave, then paused at the door. Be careful tonight, Eliza. If Dominic suspects what you're doing. I know, she said quietly. I'll be cautious. See that you are. His expression softened unexpectedly. I find I've grown, accustomed to your particular brand of defiance. It would be a shame to lose it. The words hung between them, laden with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. After he left, Liz sat staring at the diamond necklace in her palm, beautiful, valuable, and potentially deadly, just like her growing connection to Adrian Romano. The Street Louis Hotel ballroom glittered with New Orleans elite. Under crystal chandeliers, the wealthy and powerful mingled, ostensibly raising money for the Romano Foundation's international humanitarian efforts. The irony wasn't lost on Liz as she photographed Salvatore Romano, presenting an oversized check to Doctors Without Borders, blood money laundered through charity. The diamond necklace felt heavy against her collarbone, a constant reminder of her dangerous mission. Adrian had been at her side for the first hour, introducing her to key figures, establishing her presence. Now he'd been called away for a meeting with his father, leaving her to circulate alone. Quite the event, isn't it? Karina Romano appeared beside her, resplendent in a red gown. Though I suspect it's different from your usual subjects. A bit less gunfire, Liz agreed. though possibly more dangerous in subtle ways. Karina laughed, the sound genuine. I like you, Eliza Sawyer. You see clearly. She nodded toward the necklace. That's new. A gift from my brother? For tonight. Liz touched it self-consciously. It's on loan. Adrian doesn't loan family jewels to just anyone, Karina observed. That piece belonged to our grandmother. He must trust you a great deal. Before Liz could process this information, she spotted Dominic and Russo entering a side room together. Perfect opportunity. Excuse me, she murmured to Karina. Duty calls. She moved toward the side room, camera ready, heart pounding. The door was ajar, voices audible from within. She positioned herself just outside, adjusting her necklace to ensure optimal recording. Running out of time, Russo was saying. Caruso is getting impatient. He wants action, not promises. Tell him to hold his position, Dominic replied. Everything is in place for tomorrow night. When the shipment arrives at the North Dock, our people will be ready. And Adrian will be occupied elsewhere. By the time he realizes what's happened, it will be too late. The alliance will be formed, the territory divided. And Salvatore? A pause. My concern, not yours. Liz raised her camera, angling for a shot through the partially open door. The click of the shutter seemed impossibly loud. The conversation inside stopped abruptly. Someone's there, Dominic said sharply. Liz turned to retreat, only to find her path blocked by Anthony Caruso, the scarred enforcer from the engagement party. Well, well, he said, gripping her arm painfully. Romano's pet photographer. Eavesdropping again? He shoved her into the room, where Dominic and Russo turned in surprise. Look what I found lurking outside, Caruso announced. Dominic's expression hardened as he approached Liz. Where is Adrian? Meeting with his father, Liz replied, struggling to maintain her composure. He sent me to photograph guests throughout the venue. Including private conversations? Russo asked skeptically. I go where the shots are, Liz said, attempting nonchalance. Professional habit. Dominic's eyes narrowed, then fixed on her necklace. That's new. Before she could react, he reached out, examining the pendant. His expression changed as he recognized what it was. A recording device, he said softly. Very clever, Adrian. Liz's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're... The back of Dominic's hand connected with her cheek, the force snapping her head to the side. Stars exploded across her vision as she stumbled backward. Enough lies, he spat. How much did you hear? How much has been recorded? Liz tasted blood, but found her defiance. Enough to end you. Dominic laughed without humor. No, photographer. Enough to end you. He turned to Caruso. Take her out through the service entrance. No witnesses. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. And her equipment? Russo asked. Destroy it all. But first. Dominic ripped the necklace from her throat, examining it. Let's leave a message for Adrian, to remind him that sentimentality is weakness. As Caruso dragged her toward the door, Liz fought, desperation lending her strength. She managed to slam her elbow into his solar plexus, earning a momentary release enough to grab her camera and smash it into his face. He howled in pain, blood spurting from his nose. Stop her! Dominic shouted as Liz bolted for the main ballroom. She burst through the doors, immediately searching for Adrian in the crowd. Not seeing him, she headed for the nearest exit, pushing past startled guests. Behind her, she could hear Caruso and Russo in pursuit, their movements disguised by the elegance of the event. Outside, the night air hit her like a wall. She ran blindly, heels hampering her speed. A hand grabbed her arm, Russo, face contorted with rage. You're making this worse for yourself, he hissed, dragging her toward a waiting car. Let her go. The voice was cold, commanding. Karina Romano stood 10 feet away, a small pistol aimed steadily at Russo's head. This doesn't concern you, Karina, Russo said, though his grip on Liz loosened slightly. A woman being assaulted at my foundation's event? That very much concerns me. Karina's aim didn't waver. Release her. Now. For a tense moment, Liz thought Russo would defy her. Then, with a curse, he shoved Liz away. Your brother's pet project isn't worth dying for, he sneered. But remember this moment, Karina. You've chosen sides. I chose family, she replied simply, as you've clearly forgotten to do. Once Russo retreated, Karina hurried to Liz's side. Are you hurt? Just bruised. Liz managed, though her cheek throbbed painfully. Dominic has the recording device. He knows everything. We need to get you somewhere safe, Karina said urgently. Adrian is still with our father. By the time I reach him, it will be too late, Liz finished. They're planning something for tomorrow night. A shipment at the North Dock. Karina's expression hardened. My car is this way. Come, where are we going? To the only place they won't look for you, Karina replied, leading her toward a sleek Mercedes. My Home, Part 8. Independent Action and Growth. Karina Romano's French Quarter apartment was a study in contrasts, historic architecture filled with modern art, antique furniture alongside cutting-edge technology. It spoke of a woman bridging two worlds, much like its owner. Ice for your face, Karina said, handing Liz a towel-wrapped bundle. The bruising is starting to show. Liz winced as she pressed it to her cheek. Thank you. For everything back there. Don't thank me yet, Karina replied grimly, pouring 2 glasses of bourbon. We're still in danger. Dominic knows I intervened. I don't understand why you did, Liz admitted. You barely know me. I know my brother. Karina handed her a glass. And I've seen how he looks at you. That's enough. The implication made Liz uncomfortable. Adrian and I aren't. I know what you aren't. Karina interrupted gently. But I also know what you could be. More importantly, I know Adrian sees possibilities with you that he's never considered before. Before Liz could process this, Karina's phone rang. Her expression tightened as she answered. Adrian. Yes, she's with me. No, I haven't called anyone else. Of course, I'm sure we weren't followed. She glanced at Liz. She needs to tell you herself. She handed the phone to Liz, who took a steadying breath before speaking. Adrian. Dominic took the recording device. He knows everything. They're planning something tomorrow night, a shipment at the North Dock. Some kind of alliance with Caruso. A long silence then. Are you hurt? The question, focused on her well-being rather than the intelligence she'd provided, caught her off guard. I'm fine. Just a bruise. Dominic did this? His voice had dropped to a dangerous register. Yes. Another silence. This one charged with barely contained fury. Stay with Karina. Don't leave for any reason. I'm handling this, then coming for you. Adrian. Promise me, Eliza. The intensity in his voice was unmistakable. Promise you'll stay put. I promise, she said, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. After ending the call, Liz handed the phone back to Karina, who was watching her with knowing eyes. He's never like that, Karina observed, concerned for someone outside the family. He's protecting his investment, Liz replied, uncomfortable with the implication. I'm still working for him. Is that what you think this is? Karina looked genuinely surprised. Eliza, my brother doesn't trust anyone, ever. Yet he trusted you with a Romano family heirloom, with sensitive information about our organization. That goes beyond a professional relationship. Liz sipped her bourbon, the alcohol burning a path to her stomach. Even if that's true, it doesn't change what he is, what your family does. Perhaps not, Karina acknowledged, but it might change what we become. The words lingered between them as Karina moved to a laptop on her desk. Now, about this shipment at the North Dock. Let me see what's scheduled. She typed rapidly, accessing what appeared to be a shipping manifest. Interesting. There's nothing officially scheduled for tomorrow night at our North Dock facility, which means whatever's happening is off the books, Liz concluded. Precisely. And if Dominic, Russo, and Caruso are involved. Karina's expression darkened. This could be the move they've been planning. Consolidate power, eliminate opposition, namely, my brother and father. We need to warn them. Adrian knows now. Thanks to you. He'll take precautions. Karina closed the laptop. You should rest. The guest room is through there. We'll know more in the morning. But as Liz lay in the unfamiliar bed, sleep remained elusive. Her mind raced with fragments of conversation, images from the warehouse, the feel of Dominic's hand striking her face. More disturbingly, she couldn't stop thinking about Adrian, the intensity in his voice when he'd asked if she was hurt, the growing complexity of her feelings toward him. What had started as a simple job had evolved into something dangerous and uncharted. And tomorrow night, violence would erupt on the docks of New Orleans, with Adrian at its center, unless she found a way to stop it. Dawn found Liz in Karina's kitchen, reviewing images on her backup camera, the one Caruso hadn't destroyed. Most were standard event photographs, but several captured Dominic, Russo, and Caruso in various combinations throughout the evening. Evidence of a conspiracy, but not enough to prevent what was coming. Karina emerged from her bedroom, already dressed for the day in a tailored pantsuit. You're up early. Couldn't sleep, Liz admitted, Any word from Adrian? Not since last night. Karina prepared coffee for them both, which means he's gone to ground. Planning. For tonight? Most likely. Karina studied her over the rim of her coffee cup. You're worried about him. It wasn't a question, and Liz didn't bother denying it. He's walking into a trap. Adrian has survived worse. Has he? Liz asked. This is his right-hand man, someone he trusted completely. That kind of betrayal changes you. Karina finished softly. Yes, I know. Something in her tone made Liz look closer. You've experienced it. My fiancé. Before Judge Wilson's son, Karina confirmed. He was working for a rival family, using me for information. Her expression hardened. Adrian dealt with him. The implication hung in the air, another reminder of the world Liz had entered. I need to go to my apartment, Liz said, changing the subject. There's equipment there I could use. A telephoto lens that might help document whatever happens tonight. Adrian was very clear about you staying here, Karina reminded her. I'm not going to sit safely in your apartment while he walks into danger, Liz replied firmly. Not when I might be able to help. Karina's expression shifted from disapproval to consideration. You're determined to be involved. I already am involved. Might as well be useful. After a moment, Karina nodded. I'll drive you. But we'll need to be careful. Dominic may have people watching your place. The French Quarter was quiet in the early morning hours as they approached Liz's apartment building. Karina parked a block away, her keen eyes scanning the street. Looks clear, she said. But stay alert. Liz's apartment was exactly as she'd left it 2 days ago, dishes in the sink, bed unmade, photos spread across her workspace. She moved efficiently, gathering her best telephoto lens, memory cards, and a small backup camera. What exactly are you planning? Karina asked, watching from the doorway. Documentation, Liz replied, packing her gear. If I can photograph what happens at the docks tonight, Adrian will have leverage, evidence, something beyond word against word. That's assuming you can get close enough without being seen, Karina pointed out. The docks aren't exactly conducive to hiding. I've photographed in active war zones, Liz reminded her. I know how to stay invisible. Karina was quiet for a moment then. I can help you get closer. Liz looked up in surprise. How? The Romano Foundation owns a building overlooking the North Dock. We use it for shipping medical supplies to our international programs. Karina's expression was determined. From the roof, you'd have a perfect vantage point. And I have access. The offer was unexpected. Why would you risk helping me like this? Because Adrian is trying to change our family, move us toward legitimacy. If Dominic, Russo, and the Carusos succeed tonight, that all ends. Karina's gaze was direct. And because I believe you care about my brother, beyond your professional arrangement. Liz couldn't deny it, though the realization was uncomfortable. When did that happen? Probably the moment you stood up to him at Vermilion, Karina said with a small smile. Adrian respects strength. So do you. A noise in the hallway outside interrupted them. Footsteps, then voices. Karina moved silently to the window, peering out. Dominic's men, she whispered. 2 of them. Liz's heart raced. How did they know we'd be here? They might be watching all possible locations. Karina moved to the door, checking the security chain. We need another way out. Fire escape, Liz said, gathering her equipment. Through the bedroom window. They moved quietly through the apartment as the voices outside grew louder. Liz raised the bedroom window, wincing at the creaking sound. The fire escape was old but solid, extending down to the alley behind the building. You first, Liz whispered to Karina. As Karina climbed out, the apartment door splintered open. Liz grabbed her camera bag and followed, pulling the window closed behind her. They descended rapidly, the metal clanging beneath their feet. There! A voice shouted from above. Liz looked up to see one of Dominic's men leaning out her bedroom window. Run, Karina urged as they reached the alley. They sprinted toward the street, Liz's camera bag bouncing against her hip. A shot rang out, the bullet striking the brick wall beside them. Karina pulled Liz around a corner, then another, navigating the French Quarter's maze-like streets with practiced ease. Finally, breathless, they reached Karina's car. Once inside, Karina drove swiftly but without attracting attention, taking a circuitous route back toward her apartment. Still think staying put is the safer option? Liz asked, her heart rate gradually slowing. Point taken, Karina conceded, which means we need a new plan. The foundation building, Liz insisted. It's still our best option for tonight. Karina nodded slowly. I'll make the arrangements, but first, we need to try reaching Adrian again. If Dominic's men are actively hunting you, it means something has changed. Back at Karina's apartment, they tried Adrian's phone repeatedly. No answer. This isn't like him, Karina said, her concern evident. Even when he's planning something sensitive, he maintains contact. Could Dominic have gotten to him? Liz asked, voicing the fear that had been growing since their narrow escape. No, Karina replied, but her uncertainty showed. Adrian is too careful. Then why isn't he answering? Karina moved to a small safe concealed behind a painting, retrieving a sleek handgun. I don't know, but I'm not waiting to find out. She checked the weapon with practiced ease. If you're serious about documenting what happens tonight, we need to prepare. For the next several hours, they worked methodically. Liz cleaned and checked her camera equipment. Karina made calls, securing access to the Foundation building and gathering whatever intelligence she could about the night's events. The shipment is scheduled for midnight, she reported after one such call. From what I can gather, it's not goods being delivered, it's people. Key members of all three families, gathering to formalize their new alliance. With Salvatore and Adrian eliminated, Liz added grimly. That's their plan, yes. Karina's voice was steel. But plans change. As evening approached, Liz found herself studying the photos pinned to her makeshift workspace images of Adrian throughout their brief acquaintance. At Vermilion, fierce and threatening. At his office, thoughtful and strategic. At the gala, powerful yet somehow vulnerable when he thought no one was watching. Somewhere between those moments, her perception had shifted. The dangerous criminal had become a complex man, struggling to evolve beyond his violent legacy. A man she'd grown to care for more than she dared admit. He'll be there tonight, Karina said quietly, observing her from the doorway. Adrian won't hide from this confrontation. I know, Liz replied. That's what worries me. My brother has survived in this world because he's smarter than his enemies. Always 3 steps ahead. Karina approached, examining the photos. But he has a blind spot when it comes to loyalty. He believes in it absolutely. Dominic's betrayal. She shook her head. It will hurt him more than he'll ever admit. Then we make sure Dominic pays for that betrayal, Liz said firmly, packing her equipment. With evidence, not violence. Karina raised an eyebrow. You still believe there's a non-violent solution to this? I believe in Adrian's vision for your family's future, Liz replied. And that future doesn't include blood feuds and vendettas. A slow smile spread across Karina's face. You really do care about him. I care about doing the right thing, Liz corrected, though the distinction felt increasingly meaningless. As darkness fell over New Orleans, they prepared for departure. Liz dressed in black, practical clothing that would allow her to move silently if necessary. Karina similarly attired herself for stealth rather than style. One last thing, Karina said, offering Liz a small pistol. Just in case, Liz hesitated. I don't use weapons. Tonight you might need to. Karina's expression was grave. These men won't hesitate to kill you, Eliza. Don't give them the advantage. After a moment's consideration, Liz accepted the gun, securing it in her waistband. She hoped desperately she wouldn't need to use it. But Karina was right, this wasn't a war zone with clear sides and rules of engagement. This was something more personal, more dangerous. As they left the apartment, Liz's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Whatever you're planning, don't. I'm handling this. AR. The message sent a wave of relief through her. Adrian was alive and apparently still one step ahead, but it changed nothing about their plans. She typed back quickly. I'm a witness, not a bystander. I'll be careful. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she added, Trust me, like I've trusted you. As Karina drove them toward the docks, the city lights reflecting off the Mississippi River, Liz found herself at a crossroads. Behind her lay the life she'd known, the struggling photographer, the dutiful daughter. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the possibility of something she'd never allowed herself to imagine. A future intertwined with Adrian Romano's. All that stood between those two lives was one night at the docks, where everything would either end in bloodshed or begin anew. The Romano Foundation building loomed against the night sky, its upper floors dark and empty. Karina led Liz through a service entrance, using her security credentials to bypass the alarm system. Inside, the building was eerily silent, a legitimate business facade sleeping while its owners prepared for war. The roof access is this way, Karina whispered, guiding Liz toward a maintenance stairwell. There's a partial wall around the perimeter that should provide cover. They climbed in silence, emerging onto the rooftop 14 stories above the harbor. The night air was thick with humidity, carrying the scent of the Mississippi River and distant rain. From this height, the north dock was clearly visible: warehouses, shipping containers, and the dark water beyond. Liz set up her equipment with practiced efficiency, mounting her telephoto lens and testing the angles. The vantage point was perfect, offering an unobstructed view of the entire dock area. There, Karina pointed toward a cluster of SUVs arriving. Caruso's people. Through the lens, Liz could see Anthony Caruso and his men emerging from the vehicles, weapons visible beneath their jackets. They moved with military precision, securing positions around a central loading area. "How many men does Adrian have?" Liz asked, adjusting her focus. "Not enough, if this is what I think it is," Karina replied grimly. "This looks like an ambush, not a meeting." More vehicles arrived, sleek town cars this time. Liz recognized Dante Russo stepping out of the lead car, followed by several well-dressed associates. They joined Caruso's group, speaking in low tones that didn't carry to the rooftop. "Still no sign of Dominic or Adrian," Liz murmured, continuing to photograph the gathering. Karina checked her phone. "Nothing from Adrian either. This doesn't feel right." As if summoned by their concern, a final set of vehicles approached, black SUVs bearing the subtle markers of Romano family vehicles. Liz's heart raced as she adjusted her camera. The lead SUV stopped, and Adrian emerged, followed by 4 security men. No sign of Salvatore or Dominic. "Something's wrong," Karina whispered. Adrian wouldn't come without proper backup. Through her lens, Liz could see Adrian's face clearly composed, watchful, but with an undercurrent of tension she'd learned to recognize. He approached Russo and Caruso with measured steps, his men flanking him. "Where's Dominic?" Liz wondered aloud, scanning the area for Adrian's right-hand man. "I don't know," Karina replied, her voice tight with worry. "But this is clearly a trap." Below, Adrian stopped several feet from Russo and Caruso. Though too distant to hear their conversation, Liz could read the body language: Russo gesturing emphatically, Caruso standing with arms crossed, Adrian maintaining his controlled posture, despite being clearly outnumbered. Then movement caught her eye, figures emerging from behind shipping containers, advancing silently toward Adrian's position. At least a dozen armed men, weapons drawn. "Adrian!" Karina gasped, reaching for her phone. "They're surrounding him." Liz continued photographing, her heart hammering as she captured the ambush unfolding. Through her lens, she saw the exact moment Adrian realized the trap, his posture shifting subtly, his hand moving toward his waistband. Too late. The hidden gunmen opened fire, cutting down Adrian's security detail in seconds. Adrian himself dove behind a shipping container, returning fire as bullets ricocheted around him. "We have to help him," Liz said, already moving toward the stairwell. "Wait," Karina grabbed her arm. "Look." Through the chaos of gunfire, a new player had emerged onto the scene: Salvatore Romano, accompanied by what appeared to be a small army of men in tactical gear. They fired with precision, catching Russo and Caruso's forces in a deadly crossfire. Salvatore knew. Karina breathed. He set a counter-trap. The battle below had erupted into full-scale warfare. Liz continued photographing, documenting the brutality with the detached professionalism of a conflict photographer. Through her lens, she watched Adrian move with lethal efficiency, taking down opponents with practiced skill that spoke of his military background. Then she saw him, Dominic, emerging from the shadows behind Adrian, gun raised. "Adrian, behind you!" Karina screamed into her phone, but the chaos below drowned out any possibility of her warning being heard. Without thinking, Liz grabbed the pistol from her waistband. "The fire escape," she said, already moving. "We can reach the ground level." "Eliza, no," Karina called after her. "You can't." But Liz was already halfway down the fire escape, descending as rapidly as safety allowed. The sounds of gunfire grew louder as she reached street level, using shipping containers for cover as she moved closer to the battle. Through the maze of cargo and equipment, she caught glimpses of the ongoing firefight, Salvatore's men gaining ground, Caruso's forces retreating. But her focus remained singular, finding Adrian before Dominic did. She moved cautiously through the shadows, camera in one hand, gun in the other. The dock was a labyrinth of crates and containers, the sounds of combat creating disorienting echoes. A movement to her left, she spun, raising the gun, then lowered it immediately. Adrian stood 10 feet away, bleeding from a graze wound on his temple but very much alive. "Eliza?" His expression shifted from combat readiness to shock. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Saving your life, apparently," she replied, scanning the area behind him. "Dominic is..." "Right here," came a cold voice. They both turned to find Dominic emerging from behind a container, gun trained steadily on Adrian. Blood stained his shirt. Clearly he'd already been wounded in the fight, but his aim didn't waver. "I knew you'd betray me eventually," Adrian said calmly, as though discussing the weather rather than his impending death. "But not like this. Not with Russo and Caruso." "You left me no choice," Dominic replied. "Your evolution would have destroyed everything your father built. Everything I've spent my life protecting. By becoming the very thing you swore to fight against?" Adrian's voice hardened. "You were my brother in everything but blood. And you were becoming weak," Dominic spat. "Legitimate businesses, political alliances, refusing to eliminate threats when necessary." His gaze flickered to Liz. "Like her." Adrian shifted slightly, angling his body to shield Liz. "She has nothing to do with this." "She has everything to do with it," Dominic countered. "She's the proof of your weakness." The great Adrian Romano, distracted by a photographer, compromised by sentiment. "The only one compromised here is you," Adrian replied. "Working with Russo? With Caruso? Men who would stab you in the back the moment you outlived your usefulness? At least they understand power." Dominic's finger tightened on the trigger. "Goodbye, Adrian. Your father's next." Everything happened in an instant. Liz raised her gun. Adrian lunged forward. A shot rang out. But it wasn't Dominic's gun that fired. It was Karina's. She stood 20 feet away, her aim perfect as Dominic crumpled to his knees, blood blossoming across his chest. His gun clattered to the ground as he fell forward. "No one threatens my family," Karina said softly, lowering her weapon. For a moment, no one moved. Then Adrian crossed to Dominic's body, checking for a pulse before closing the man's eyes with a gentle touch that spoke of their years of brotherhood. "It's over," Karina said, approaching them. "Father's men have secured the area. Russo's dead. Caruso wounded but captured." Adrian nodded, then turned to Liz, his expression shifting from grief to anger. "You promised to stay put. To stay safe." "I promised to be careful," Liz corrected, holstering her gun. "And I was. You call this careful?" He gestured around at the bullet-riddled shipping containers. "You could have been killed." "So could you," she retorted. "If we hadn't been here, Dominic would have shot you in the back." Adrian ran a hand through his hair, frustration warring with relief. "Why? Why risk yourself like this?" The question hung between them, demanding honesty neither had been willing to voice until now. "Because you matter to me," Liz said simply. "More than I expected, more than I should allow." Something in Adrian's expression softened, the anger giving way to vulnerability rarely glimpsed. He stepped closer, one hand coming up to cup her face with unexpected gentleness. "You are the most infuriating, stubborn." He shook his head, words failing him. Then he kissed her, not gentle, not careful, but with all the pent-up emotion of their dangerous dance. Liz responded instinctively, her hands gripping his shoulders, tasting blood and gunpowder and something uniquely Adrian. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Karina cleared her throat. "As touching as this is, perhaps we could continue the reunion somewhere that isn't an active crime scene?" Reality came crashing back, the bodies surrounding them, the echo of gunshots still hanging in the air, the approaching wail of police sirens. "We need to go," Adrian agreed, his hand finding Liz's. "All of us." As they made their way from the docks, navigating through the aftermath of violence toward an uncertain future, Liz found herself at another crossroads, the photojournalist who documented humanity's darkness versus the woman who had found unexpected light in the most dangerous of places. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine choosing both. 3 weeks later, Liz stood in the gallery of Aperture Studio, surrounded by the evidence of her life's work. The walls displayed her journey as a photographer, Syrian refugee children playing in rubble, Ukrainian grandmothers with ancient shotguns, and now, a new collection titled Evolution that documented the Romano family's transformation. The gallery opening had been Karina's idea, a public statement of the family's shift toward legitimacy. The photographs had been carefully selected, nothing that could incriminate, but honest enough to tell a compelling story of change. "Quite the turnout," Rachel observed, appearing at Liz's side with 2 glasses of champagne. "Who knew gangsters cleaned up so well?" "Former gangsters," Liz corrected, accepting the drink. "At least officially," Rachel snorted. "Right. And I'm the Queen of England." Her expression softened. "How's your dad doing?" "Better than anyone expected," Liz replied with genuine joy. "The trial at the Romano Medical Research Center is showing remarkable results. His oncologist is using terms like remission and recovery. Amazing what happens when you start dating the owner," Rachel teased. The treatment would have happened regardless, Liz insisted, though she couldn't help but smile. Adrian was clear about that from the beginning. Speaking of your dangerous boyfriend, Rachel nodded toward the entrance. The man himself has arrived. Adrian entered the gallery with his characteristic commanding presence, though tonight he wore it differently. The tailored suit remained, but something in his demeanor had shifted, less enforcer, more business leader. Salvatore walked beside him, the family patriarch appearing smaller somehow, as if the weight of command was gradually shifting to his son. Their eyes met across the crowded space, and Adrian's expression warmed visibly. He made his way toward her, stopping occasionally to shake hands with guests, politicians, business leaders, and yes, certain figures whose connections to the underworld remained intact despite the family's evolution. Miss Sawyer, he greeted formally when he reached her, though his eyes conveyed something far more intimate. Impressive work. Mr. Romano, she replied with equal formality. I'm glad you approve. I'll just go check on the catering, Rachel said, making a hasty exit. Once alone, Adrian's professional mask slipped. He took Liz's hand, thumb tracing circles on her palm in the gesture that had become familiar over the past weeks. You've managed to make us look almost respectable, he observed, surveying the photographs. I worked with what I had, Liz teased. Some subjects are more challenging than others. His smile, still rare enough to feel like a gift, transformed his face. The Times article comes out tomorrow. Your exclusive on the Romano Reformation, as they're calling it. Nervous? She asked. About having our family business splashed across national media? He pretended to consider. Surprisingly, no. You kept your word about protecting operational details while telling the truth. I always keep my word, Liz reminded him. Unlike some people who promised no censorship and then redacted half my initial draft. Only the parts that could have gotten people killed, Adrian defended, though his tone remained light. As agreed. Their banter was interrupted by Salvatore approaching, champagne in hand. In the weeks since the docks, the Romano patriarch had aged noticeably, the loss of Dominic, and the violent end to decades of operation taking their toll. Eliza, he greeted warmly. The photographs are remarkable. You've captured something I didn't think possible. What's that, Mr. Romano? Hope, he said simply. The possibility of redemption, even for men like us. The sincerity in his voice touched her. I photographed what I saw, nothing more. And that's your gift, Salvatore replied, seeing beyond the surface. He turned to his son. The mayor has arrived. We should greet him. After they departed, Liz continued circulating through the gallery, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about her work. The exhibition was a success by any standard, the Times photographer taking pictures of her pictures, art critics noting her unflinching yet compassionate eye, collectors inquiring about purchasing prints. But her greatest satisfaction came from watching Adrian move through the space, introducing legitimate business associates to political figures, building the connections that would cement his new path. Occasionally their eyes would meet across the room, a private communication amid the public spectacle. As the evening wound down, Liz found herself in the small office at the back of the gallery, taking a moment of quiet amid the celebration. Adrian appeared in the doorway, 2 fresh glasses of champagne in hand. Hiding? He asked, offering her a glass. Recharging, she corrected. It's been a long night. A successful one. He settled beside her on the small couch. The exhibition is selling out. The Times piece is generating buzz, and your father's latest scans show significant improvement. Everything falling into place, Liz agreed, leaning against his shoulder. Not everything, Adrian said quietly. There's still one matter unresolved. Something in his tone made her look up. What's that? Adrian set down his glass and reached into his jacket pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. Liz's breath caught as he opened it, revealing not jewelry, but a key. What is this? She asked, though she suspected the answer. A key to my home, he replied, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Our home, if you want it to be. The implications hung between them, not just a key, but a future. A choice. Adrian, she began carefully. We've only known each other for 2 months, and in that time, you've seen the worst of me and the best of me, he replied. You've witnessed things most people never experience in a lifetime. You know exactly who I am, what I've done, and what I'm trying to become. His eyes held hers. Can you say that about any other relationship you've had? He was right, of course. Their connection had been forged in extraordinary circumstances, danger and violence accelerating intimacy that might otherwise have taken years to develop. What about your world? Liz asked, the question that had troubled her from the beginning. You're still Adrian Romano. Still connected to elements of your old life. Still a target for enemies. Always, he acknowledged without hesitation. That won't change, not completely. The question is whether what we've found together is worth that risk. Liz thought about the photographs on the gallery walls, images capturing moments of transformation, vulnerability, strength. She thought about Adrian at the docks, grieving for Dominic even as he pushed forward with his vision for the future. She thought about her father, improving daily thanks to treatments funded by the very organization Adrian was reshaping. Most of all, she thought about the man beside her, complex, dangerous, honorable in his own way, and somehow perfectly matched to her own stubborn courage. I'm still going to document the truth, she warned. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it means photographing the parts of your world you'd rather keep hidden. I would expect nothing less, Adrian replied. Your integrity is part of why I... He paused, then continued with quiet certainty. Part of why I love you. The words, spoken for the first time, filled the space between them. Liz reached for the key, her fingers closing around it. I love you too, she said, the admission both terrifying and liberating. Despite everything, or maybe because of it. Adrian's smile was brilliant in its rarity, transforming his face from dangerous to simply beautiful. He pulled her close, kissing her with an intensity that spoke of relief and joy and promise. So that's a yes? He asked when they finally broke apart. It's a yes, she confirmed. But I'm keeping my studio. I need workspace that's mine. Anything you need, he agreed immediately. I would never ask you to give up your independence, Eliza. It's too much a part of who you are. The understanding in his voice confirmed what she'd already known, that despite his controlling nature, Adrian respected her autonomy in ways few others had. We should get back to the gallery, Liz said, though she made no move to rise. People will notice we're both missing. Let them notice, Adrian replied, his arm tightening around her. I'm tired of hiding what matters. As they sat together in the quiet office, the sounds of the exhibition continuing without them, Liz reflected on the unlikely path that had brought them here from a shattered camera lens and threats exchanged at Vermilion to a future neither could have imagined. She was a photographer who had captured too much. He was a criminal trying to become something more. Together, they had found something neither expected, a chance to document a transformation that went beyond his family's evolution to include their own hearts as well. Outside, New Orleans continued its eternal dance of beauty and danger, darkness and light. But in this moment, in this space, they had found their own definition of both. 6 months after the gallery opening, Aperture Studio had transformed. No longer struggling, Liz's photography business had flourished with commissions from major publications eager for the photographer who had documented the Romano family's evolution. The Times exclusive had sparked a series of follow-up articles, each highlighting different aspects of the family's transition to legitimacy. On this particular morning, Liz was reviewing proofs for her upcoming book, a collection documenting the intersection of legitimate business and organized crime throughout New Orleans history. The Romano family featured prominently, though with their explicit permission and within the boundaries they'd established. These look good, Rachel said, examining the layout. Though I still can't believe Adrian approved this one. She pointed to a striking image of Salvatore Romano at his desk, head bowed in apparent weariness, the weight of decades visible in his posture. It was intimate, vulnerable, a side of the family patriarch few had witnessed. He trusts my judgment, Liz replied simply, and he understands that honest documentation is more powerful than propaganda. Still weird hearing you talk about a mob boss like he's just another client, Rachel muttered. Former mob boss, Liz corrected automatically. The Romano legitimate enterprises are now... I know, Rachel interrupted with a grin. Fully compliant with all applicable laws and regulations. You've mentioned it once or twice. Liz smiled, acknowledging the gentle teasing. The past months had required considerable adjustment for everyone in her life. Rachel, her father, her professional colleagues. The transition from struggling photojournalist to successful photographer in a relationship with Adrian Romano had raised eyebrows and prompted questions she couldn't always answer fully. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Meeting finished early. Dinner tonight at Giovanni's? 7 p.m.? She replied affirmatively, warmth spreading through her at the simple domestic exchange. They had settled into a rhythm over the past months, Adrian fully engaged in restructuring the family business. Liz building her career while documenting the process. They shared a home, a life, and increasingly, a vision for the future. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when Adrian's world intruded security concerns, old associates requiring management, the occasional threat that needed addressing, but they had found balance within the complexity. Earth to Liz. Rachel waved a hand in front of her face. You've got that sappy look again. Adrian texting? We're having dinner tonight, Liz confirmed, setting down her phone. And I don't have a sappy look. You absolutely do, Rachel countered. Same one you had when that gallerist from New York offered you a solo exhibition. Speaking of which, Liz redirected. I need to finalize the selections for that show. Can you pull the Syria portfolio? They worked companionably through the afternoon, the studio humming with productive energy. Liz had hired 2 assistants to help manage her expanded workload, and Aperture had moved to a larger space in the French Quarter, still independent from Adrian's world, still entirely hers. At 6, she packed up her materials and headed home to change for dinner. Their shared residence, a renovated historic property overlooking Audubon Park, was a perfect blend of their aesthetics. Adrian's preference for clean lines and understated luxury complemented Liz's more eclectic, artistic sensibilities. As she dressed for dinner, Liz caught sight of her reflection, still recognizably herself, but different, more confident, less haunted by the images she'd captured in conflict zones. The woman who stared back had found something she hadn't realized she was seeking. Giovanni's was busy when she arrived, the small Italian restaurant a favorite of theirs despite, or perhaps because of its lack of connection to the Romano family businesses. Adrian was already at their usual corner table, rising when he saw her approach. You look beautiful, he said, kissing her cheek. You look tired, she replied honestly, noting the shadows beneath his eyes. Difficult meeting? Complicated, he corrected, holding her chair. The transition of our shipping operations is meeting resistance from certain parties who benefited from the previous arrangements. Liz understood the subtext: former associates unhappy with the Romano family's move toward legitimacy. Anything I need to worry about? No, Adrian replied firmly. It's being handled. Legally, he added, seeing her skeptical expression. Their server arrived with wine, a bottle Adrian had already ordered, knowing her preference. As they settled into the familiar comfort of the restaurant, Liz observed the subtle changes in the man across from her. Still commanding, still intense, but less guarded. More willing to share the burdens he carried. I visited Dad today, she said after they'd ordered. His doctor says he's officially in remission. No detectable cancer cells in the latest scans. Adrian's genuine smile, no longer so rare, transformed his face. That's wonderful news, Eliza. We should celebrate. We are, she replied, raising her glass. 2 second chances. To seeing clearly, he countered, touching his glass to hers. Your father is a remarkable man. His resilience reminds me of someone else I know. Liz accepted the compliment with a slight nod. He asked about you. Wants to know when you're coming for Sunday dinner again. I'll be there, Adrian promised. Assuming no emergencies arise, the qualification hung between them, a reminder of the reality they navigated daily. Adrian's world, while increasingly legitimate, still operated with its own demands and dangers. I've been thinking, Adrian said after their entrees arrived, about the Romano Foundation's international humanitarian work. What about it? Liz asked, curious about the shift in topic. We've been funding medical supplies, building clinics, but we've lacked proper documentation of these efforts. His eyes met hers. The kind of documentation that could help secure additional funding, governmental partnerships. Understanding dawned. You want me to photograph the Foundation's work abroad? Consider it, Adrian suggested. A series of field assignments documenting real impact. No staged photos, no propaganda, just the truth, as you always insist on capturing. The proposal was intriguing, a return to international work, but without the danger of conflict photography, a way to use her skills for genuine humanitarian impact. I'd maintain complete editorial control? She asked, already considering the possibilities. Naturally, Adrian confirmed, though the Foundation board would need approval rights for images used in official materials. Reasonable, Liz agreed. When would this start? The clinic in Haiti opens next month, Adrian replied, and Liz realized he'd been planning this for some time. I thought perhaps we might both go. I have business interests to review in the region, and you could begin the documentation project. We? Liz repeated, surprised. You want to travel together? Something vulnerable flickered across Adrian's face, a rare glimpse beneath his composed exterior. We've been building separate but connected lives here in New Orleans. I thought it might be valuable to experience something new together. The proposition represented more than a professional opportunity. It was an invitation to further entwine their lives, to create shared experiences beyond the circumstances that had brought them together. "I'd like that," Liz said softly. "Very much." Relief and pleasure mingled in Adrian's expression. "Good. Karina will be pleased this was partly her idea." "Your sister has become quite the matchmaker," Liz observed with amusement. "First pushing you to trust me, now orchestrating joint international travel." "She sees the benefit of our partnership," Adrian replied. "Both professionally and personally." "Partnership," Liz repeated, the words settling comfortably between them. "That's what this is, isn't it? Not just a relationship, but a genuine partnership." Adrian's hand found hers across the table, his thumb tracing the familiar circles on her palm that never failed to send warmth through her. "Equal participants? Complementary strengths? Yes, I believe that's exactly what we've built." As they finished dinner and stepped into the New Orleans night, Liz felt the solid certainty of their connection. What had begun with a shattered camera lens and threats exchanged had evolved into something neither could have anticipated, a partnership forged in crisis, tested by danger, and now flourishing in the light of honest recognition. Adrian's hand rested at the small of her back as they walked toward his car, the gesture both protective and respectful of her independence. The dichotomy embodied everything about their relationship: security without constraint, strength without dominance. "There's one more thing I'd like to discuss," Adrian said as they reached the vehicle. "But not here." His serious tone gave her pause. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect," he assured her. "I just want the right setting for this particular conversation." Curious but trusting, Liz allowed him to drive them not home, but toward the river. They parked near the waterfront and walked along the moonlit Mississippi, the city lights reflecting off its surface. "Do you remember the first time I threatened you?" Adrian asked suddenly, humor threading through his voice. "Vividly," Liz replied dryly. "Something about making me disappear with one phone call. Very dramatic." His low laugh warmed her more than the humid night air. "I was terrified of you," he admitted. "Of me?" Liz stopped walking, surprised by the confession. "You were the dangerous one. You saw through me immediately," Adrian countered. "Past the reputation, past the facade. You looked at me, really looked, and didn't flinch. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How valuable?" The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Adrian, I've spent my life surrounded by people who either fear me or want something from me," he continued. "Until you. You challenged me, pushed me to be better than my circumstances, my history." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small box that made Liz's heart skip. "6 months ago I gave you a key," he said, opening the box to reveal a platinum ring with a single perfect diamond. "Today, I'm asking for something more permanent." 1 year to the day, after their first confrontation at Vermilion, Liz stood outside the restaurant, camera in hand. The elegant establishment looked much as it had that night: white tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, the atmosphere of exclusivity that defined New Orleans' finest dining. But everything else had changed. "Ready?" Adrian asked, approaching from where he'd parked the car. "Almost." Liz adjusted her camera settings. "I want to capture the exterior before we go in." He waited patiently as she photographed the facade, the entrance, the play of evening light against the historic building. Though he'd become accustomed to her photographic impulses, there was an indulgent tenderness in his observation that made her smile. "Perfect," she said finally, lowering the camera. "You certainly are," he replied, offering his arm. The engagement ring caught the light as she linked her arm with his. 6 months since his proposal by the river, their partnership had deepened in ways neither had anticipated. The Haiti trip had been followed by others: the Romano Foundation's projects in Puerto Rico, Guatemala, and most recently, Ukraine, where Liz had returned not as a conflict photographer but as a documentarian of healing and rebuilding. Each journey had strengthened their connection, revealing new facets of each other outside the pressure cooker of New Orleans. Adrian had shown unexpected gentleness with orphaned children in Haiti, practical problem-solving when their transport broke down in rural Guatemala, and quiet respect for Liz's emotional return to Ukraine. Inside Vermilion, the maitre d' greeted them with deference. "Mr. Romano, Miss Sawyer, your table is ready." They were led not to a regular dining table but to the exact spot where they had first confronted each other, now set for an intimate dinner for two, with candles and a bottle of champagne already chilling. "Sentimental, Mr. Romano?" Liz teased as he held her chair. "I wouldn't have expected it." "Call it an appreciation for symmetry," Adrian replied, taking his seat. One full cycle, ending where we began, but as different people. Not so different, Liz countered. You're still intimidatingly powerful. I'm still stubbornly independent. And yet, Adrian said, reaching for her hand across the table. Here we are, she agreed, the simple phrase encompassing their improbable journey. As they dined, Liz couldn't help comparing this evening to their first encounter. The restaurant that had once felt like a battlefield now seemed like a sanctuary. The man who had threatened her was now her fiancé, looking at her with undisguised affection. I have something for you, Adrian said after they'd finished their entrees. He withdrew a legal envelope from his jacket. A wedding present, of sorts, though perhaps more accurately, a partnership consolidation. Intrigued, Liz opened the envelope. Inside were documents transferring ownership of Vermilion Restaurant to a new corporate entity, Sawyer Romano Enterprises. You're giving me the restaurant? She asked, confused. I'm making you an equal partner in it, Adrian clarified. The place where our story began, now jointly owned. The first of several such transfers. Understanding dawned. This is about your family's legitimate businesses. Certain key holdings, Adrian nodded. The restaurant, the foundation, the medical research center, all being restructured with you as an equal partner. The magnitude of the gesture wasn't lost on her. For a man raised in the world of traditional organized crime, where power and control were paramount, sharing ownership represented unprecedented trust. Adrian, I don't know what to say. Say you'll continue to challenge me, he replied, his expression serious beneath the surface charm. Say you'll use your voice and your vision to keep us honest. Say you'll be my partner in every sense. You know I will, Liz assured him, touched by the vulnerability beneath his composed exterior. Though I should warn you, I have plans of my own for this partnership. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. His eyes crinkled with amusement. Share them. I want to establish a photography scholarship, Liz explained, the idea she'd been developing for months finally taking form. For young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. Training, equipment, mentorship, everything I never had starting out. Through the foundation? Yes, but with a twist. Her excitement grew as she outlined the vision. Not just traditional photography, but documentary work focused on community challenges, using visual storytelling to highlight issues that need addressing, then connecting those photographers with the foundation's resources to implement solutions. Adrian listened intently, his expression thoughtful. Visual advocacy leading directly to action. Combining your skills with our resources. Exactly, Liz confirmed. It creates a pipeline. Identify problems through photography. Address them through the foundation. Document the impact. Repeat. Sustainable, community-driven change. Brilliant, Adrian said simply. When can you start? The immediate support, without qualification or hesitation, embodied everything their partnership had become, each strengthening the other's vision, creating something neither could accomplish alone. As they finished dinner, Adrian suggested a walk along the riverfront where he had proposed. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights, the Mississippi flowing steadily beside them. I received an interesting offer today, Adrian said as they walked. The Governor's Economic Development Council. They're looking for business leaders to advise on rebuilding struggling communities throughout Louisiana. That's a significant recognition, Liz observed. Very public. Yes, Adrian agreed. 5 years ago, it would have been unthinkable. The Romano family operated in shadows, not government chambers. And now I'm considering accepting, he said. With one condition, that my fiancé's community photography program be integrated into the initiative. Liz stopped walking, turning to face him fully. You're serious? Entirely, Adrian confirmed. Your approach to documentation leading to action aligns perfectly with what they're trying to accomplish. Plus, he added with a slight smile, having an internationally recognized photojournalist involved lends considerable credibility. The proposal represented everything they'd been working toward: legitimate influence, positive impact, their complementary skills deployed for genuine change. We've come a long way from thrown cameras and threats, Liz said softly. To partnership and possibility, Adrian agreed, drawing her close. Though I maintain that breaking your lens was the best mistake I ever made. Because it brought me into your world? Liz asked. Because it brought you into my life, he corrected. My world has changed because of you, Eliza. Evolved in ways I never imagined possible. As they stood together beneath the New Orleans sky, Liz reflected on the unlikely path that had led them here. A defiant photographer who refused to flinch from danger. A powerful man seeking transformation beyond his violent legacy. Their collision should have ended in tragedy, not in this peaceful moment of shared purpose. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked, noting her thoughtful expression. "That some stories can only be understood in retrospect," Liz replied. "In the moment, they seem impossible, chaotic. It's only later you see the pattern, the purpose. And our story?" His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "What pattern do you see?" Liz considered the question, thinking of the images she'd captured over the past year, Adrian negotiating with former rivals, establishing legitimate businesses, directing humanitarian resources through the foundation. Alongside those quieter moments, Adrian with her father, discussing history over chess, Adrian patiently teaching her to defend herself, Adrian vulnerable in sleep, nightmares of his past occasionally surfacing. "Redemption," she said finally. "Not erasing the past, but building something better from it. Taking what was destructive and channeling it into creation." "Through your eyes," Adrian said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "You saw possibilities I couldn't." "I just captured what was already there," Liz corrected. "The brave face you showed the world contained the truth of who you could become. I simply focused the lens." He kissed her then, beneath the New Orleans stars, the city that had witnessed their beginning now watching their transformation. Photographer and subject, criminal and witness, two people who had captured each other completely, developing something neither could have created alone. As they walked back toward Vermilion, where their story had begun with broken glass and threats, Liz felt the weight of her camera against her hip, the tool that had brought them together, that continued to document their unlikely journey. The photographs she'd taken, from that first confrontation to this night of celebration, told a story of evolution, courage, and unexpected connection. Some might call it an unlikely love story, others, a tale of redemption. But for Liz Sawyer, who had spent her life capturing truth in the midst of chaos, it was simply this: evidence that sometimes seeing clearly means looking beyond the surface, beyond preconceptions, beyond fear. Sometimes, the most important thing a photographer can capture is possibility.